Las noticias marcan de que la euforia de las personas es tan contagiosa, de que se puede sentir incluso en países tan lejanos, incluso los países cercanos del Medio Oriente, que lamentablemente hay uno que otro fuego cruzado. Dicen de que la alegría de las personas de Israel y del otro lado de Palestina es tan eufórica que se espera un buen mañana. Sin embargo, el día de hoy, jueves 9 de octubre del 2025, Israel, a solo unas pocas horas de que se firmó la paz, un acuerdo también de Estados Unidos con el presidente Donald Trump y otros países involucrados para traer la paz y ponerle fin a esta sangrienta guerra entre Israel y Palestina, los israelíes dicen de que este conflicto podría incluso terminar pronto, pero a solo unas pocas horas nuevamente soldados israelíes volvieron a disparar en la franja de Gaza. Como ustedes saben, esto es una completa locura, pero aquí te voy a hacer una pregunta muy importante que espero que la puedas responder. ¿Tú crees que esto va a terminar pronto? ¿Crees que este acuerdo que acaba de firmar el presidente de los Estados Unidos y también la Unión Europea, crees que esto va a traer paz para el Medio Oriente? Según las palabras del presidente de los Estados Unidos, debería ganarse un premio Nobel. Eso es lo que se dice él mismo. Y claro, volviendo al tema que estamos hablando de Israel y Palestina, hay muchas personas desplazadas, un número incalculable de cuánta gente se quedó sin hogar y que tuvieron que llegar a otros países donde, lamentablemente, no fueron bien recibidos. Por el lado de Palestina también tuvieron problemas, pero incluso los rehenes que se tenían allí fueron liberados y según las palabras de Donald Trump, los rehenes están sanos y salvos y algunos, lamentablemente, no lograron sobrevivir. Si recuerdan, hace 2 años, en el 2023, había una fiesta donde varios soldados entraron disparando y secuestraron a varias de estas personas que nada más se encontraban allí para festejar. Y por el otro lado, si volteamos nuestra mirada para este rumbo, Donald Trump dijo lo siguiente.
After the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with the mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious, known as Donald J. Trump. I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait till you see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns and spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building and did not even get the marble floors that I promised them. you walk on terraza. Do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out that they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much, much bigger. Very sad to see. Whether the UN can manage to play a productive role, I've come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation in this assembly that is willing to join us in forging a safer, more prosperous world. And it's a world that we'll be much happier with. A dramatically better future is within our reach. But to get there, we must reject the failed approaches of the past and work together to confront some of the greatest threats in history. There is no more serious danger to our planet today than the most powerful and destructive weapons ever devised by man, of which the United States, as you know, has many. Just as I did in my first term, I've made containing these threats a top priority, starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon. That's why shortly after taking office, I sent the so-called Supreme Leader a letter making a generous offer. I extended a pledge of full cooperation in exchange for a suspension of Iran's nuclear program. The regime's answer was to continue their constant threats to their neighbors and U.S. interests throughout the region and some great countries that are right nearby. Today, many of Iran's former military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They're dead. And 3 months ago, in Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped the 14 30,000-pound each bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally obliterating everything. No other country on earth could have done what we did. No other country has the equipment to do what we did. We have the greatest weapons on earth. We hate to use them. But we did something that for 22 years people wanted to do. With Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity demolished, I immediately brokered an end to the 12-day war, as it's called, between Israel and Iran, with both sides agreeing to fight no longer. As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too. But you know, we have a border, strong, and we have a shape, And that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about. Flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then somebody will get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a...
Aunque claro, ante estas declaraciones ante la ONU, se ha hablado de que Donald Trump la siguiente semana visitará a Egipto para firmar este tratado. Aún no se sabe qué pasará con Hamas, si se va a desarmar y si se van a fijar las fronteras ya de una vez entre Israel y Palestina. Mientras tanto, en México, la embajadora de Israel está de desacuerdo con las palabras de la presidenta Claudia Sheinbaum y ahora Donald Trump arremete contra España. ¿Ustedes piensan que es el fin del conflicto? Ha sintonizado Surd Horror y nos vemos hasta la próxima.